final step of creating our barrel, or at least the last step I'm going to show you before you complete it yourself, is to create the edge or create these bands, the metal bands, by essentially splitting our little, let's see what we've got here. We're going to split these edges in two, that one that goes around here, split it in half, and then grab those faces and extrude out a little bit. So sounds simple, and it is. There's a few ways to do it. Let's pop back to Maya and open our reference. There's a few ways to do it once you have an edge selected. One thing is you could just move it a bit and put in a new edge. One way to do that is if we were to move it down a bit, we could use multi-cut, which is this tool here. And this is good for just cutting edges into other ones. But if you hold down Control, it turns into an edge loop creator. So that will give you the top and bottom of our loop. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it in a single step without having to create, move anything around, and for it to be pretty precise, like half and exactly evenly spaced, I guess, is to use a thing called bevel. Now, because it doesn't intrinsically make any sense, the idea of how this works on its own, we just quickly have a look at what a bevel is. A bevel or chamfer is when you just, angle off the edge of something, right? So technically it's called a chamfer in woodworking. But yeah, we take what would have been a sharp edge like this one and we add a face. So let's have a look at what that looks like. If we did it up here, it's pretty clear what it does, right? We hit bevel. Oh yeah, does that. I can change how much the bevel is. I can change whether it's rounded a bit, has segments. All right. So why is that relevant here? Well, you can see that in the process of making a bevel, all it's really doing, it's creating two edges and putting a face in between. That is exactly what we need here, is two edges and then the faces in between. So let's give it a try and use it sort of off prescription, but for what we want. Bevel, there we go. And Control drag on fraction to get the size we want. I'd say that's pretty close. And now we just want to select around here. Now, just like before with edge loop, you could double click and it will select across. If we try it with faces, we might get lucky, but probably not, because with a face, it doesn't just have a loop going around this way, it has a loop going this way as well. So Maya doesn't know what you mean when you want to select them all. So how can we select them? One way is if we hit space and go to our side view, you could just drag select here, and now you've got them all. The reason I didn't do it in this view is because it might look like I'm selecting them, but you can see here, because of perspective, in the back you're actually selecting weird faces. So you can grab them here and then hit space again and you've got it. The other way is if you click one and then shift double click the one next to it, Maya can then guess, okay, you want me to go all the way around. If I did it vertically, it also can figure it out. So click, shift double click, and we've got all our faces. And now we want to do the two things that we did before. We want to do an extrude, but when you're making stuff for games and you want maximum visibility, sometimes being pretty much accurate to reality. So if we hit extrude and we just put some thickness on it, those metal bands might be accurate in that they directly have, they have these perpendicular sides, but it's hard to see that top edge and it gets lost a bit. And when you're looking at something from this far away, let me turn off the object selection. It's not super easy to see that it has that top bevel. And you can see here that it's quite exaggerated on our barrel, and I want to exaggerate it a bit here, but in two ways. And the trick is, when you do a bevel in a game, let's have a look at I've already covered it here. You want it to be slightly, like a trapezoidal sort of shape, a trapezium, which is just a rectangle that's a bit skinnier on this side than it is here. Essentially, we want it to come out a bit and then also have the edges sort of, so we're shrinking it vertically. So let's see what that means. If we hit extrude, there's no reason you have to pick just one of these things, right? So if we use control and thickness to get that, now we can use offset, which is what we used before, to resize it. And if you're not sure why that works with offset, what if I tried it in the opposite order, right? If I hit extrude, and instead of going out, first I use offset, and you can see that we're going in a little bit, essentially from those top edges. And then when we go out, there's our sort of trapezoidal shape, our sloped sides. I'm going to make it a bit less dramatic. There we go. This not only benefits us now, but it will be a benefit later when you start making really high detailed stuff, because normal maps, the things that help you with that, they capture detail a lot better when it's not just completely perpendicular, when you have a bit of a slope. All right, so that's how you put the edge bands on. So what remains to be done? Let's look at our barrel. That's all the steps covered, but what hasn't been done is, first of all, you need to make that bottom band, so I'll leave that up to you. We need to put on these rivets, and that's essentially just create a sphere, scale it till it's almost flat, and pop it on some of those, pop it in those places. I'm not going to show you how to do that because you guys have already figured that out with the when we did the table exercise and made different sized table legs. And finally, materials. You already know how to create a material. We'll quickly cover it again. If we go material, we right click our barrel. Sorry, let me just get rid of the modeling toolkit and we'll make this a bit smaller again, out of the way. All right, we select our barrel, right click, go to assign a new material, or we'll go to favorite material, and we're going to go a Phong material. We'll call it wood underscore matte, and we'll click and make it a bit orangey. So if you're selecting over here and it's not changing color, that's because this point here is still over in the grays. So you need to move over into color, and then there we go. So let's say we were happy with that orangey shade. It's a bit shiny, so I'm going to turn this cosine power. Just know that if you drag that left and right, it changes how shiny that thing looks. And the specular color, if we turn that down a bit, it's not so bright. There's our wood. Now, your next job is to select all the bits you want to be metal. So that'll be both of your edge bands and your spheres. Well, we can do them one at a time. How would we do the spheres? Well, you just click on them and you right click and go to, assign favorite material, Phong, make a metal one. Or once you've created it, you can go assign existing material. So here's our wood mat, and you can assign a metal one. You are going to need to do it to just the faces here that you want to be metallic. So remember, we know how to select them. Shift, double click, and then shift, click, shift, double click, and so on until you've selected them all. Not as obvious when it's orange, but you can see that I'm selecting it. And then you can apply the material to just those faces. So give that a go. Turn those metallic and also the bottom band and the spheres, and your barrel will be done. Thank you for watching. Make sure you take some screenshots, post it into our Discord chat if you're in my class.